Hello, and welcome to well, it's actually not the very first, it's the second episode of our new Warhammer 40k book club video cast. Last month, we talked about Dark Imperium by Guy Haley. This month, we are talking about The Magos by Dan Abnett. So we show off our matching copies here. If you have not yet read the book, be sure to bookmark this podcast or this video cast, however you're consuming it, and come back and listen along with us after you have, because we will be going in depth to talk about the book and lots of spoilers. So this is your spoiler alert. And as always, as we go through our questions, if you have any thoughts that you want to throw out to us, we welcome them in comments on YouTube, on Twitter, and I think those are probably the quickest and easiest ways to reach us. We're always wanting to talk about our books. So the very first question.
Well, what I was about to break in though is that if you haven't read the Magos, if you've never read the Eisenhorn, you need to at least read Eisenhorn first.
Yes, I think we have that on our website for our Warhammer 40k beginners guide. There, if you're lucky, you can get an omnibus that has the 3 books in it, which is Xenos, Malleus, and Hereticus. I think are the 3.
Yeah, the 3 Ordos.
Mm-hmm. And right now, the Black Library is actually selling them, I think, separately, each of the books separately. But you can track down in some places the omnibus, and I really recommend getting the omnibus because there's a couple short stories in there. Actually, I think both of them are repeated in this.
They are.
Book, actually. Yeah. So we'll talk about that here in a second. But there's a lot of information in this book. The other thing I would say is that you should probably be a little passingly familiar with Gideon Ravner and beyond what was presented to you in the Eisenhorn books. So you don't need to have read the full Ravner omnibus, I don't think.
Well, I mean, I just read the first one.
Right. So you at least knew who some of the characters were. So
I did.
Claudius, yeah. I think that's somewhat important because there are a few stories in here that kind of assume you're at least passingly familiar with Ravner. Which, yeah. So having said all of that background information, this isn't even, you can't even call this a sequel. This is like probably the 8th or 9th book. And actually, the good news is, I will say this, if you haven't read Pariah or any of the additional post-Eisenhorn trilogy books, you don't really need to be familiar with those. They're not...
No, well, it actually makes it very clear that this is before Pariah.
Yes. So if you're wondering, like, oh my God, how many books do I have to read? The answer is 4. So This is kind of a different book in so much as it's kind of similar to Dark Imperium, where we said that wasn't really a beginner's book. This one, you actually have to be more than passingly familiar with a specific series. So having said that, let's dive in. What did you think of the book? Did you like it?
I really did. I really, really did. There was some parts, especially like the first short story, because the Magos is a novel, but it's like the last fourth of the book. 3/4 of the book are all short stories. And so I kind of like that in a way, because then I was like reading just one short story a night.
So to give you an idea, this right here is the Magos, and
okay, so maybe closer to 1/3, 2/3.
Yeah, about that I would say.
Yeah,
that's what I was trying to flip through.
But there was a lot of short, and there was like this first short story in the very beginning. I was like, I don't understand how this pertains to anything. And then of course in the Magos, it's like, oh no, that's actually very, very important to this whole thing. And I think all of the short stories have that, where you may be like, okay, that's a nice little story, but I don't understand what this has to do with anything. And it all kind of ties in, because pretty much anything that Gregor Eisenhorn does, and then anything has been written about him, is very important for what he's doing next or now.
Yeah, I compared it to when I was reading it with all the short stories. If you've ever watched a TV series, when you get to the second season, there's always like a 5-minute previously on Justified, and then they like cover all of the highlights from the previous season that you have to know about to go into this season. That's really what this felt like. The first 2/3 of the book feel like a previously in Eisenhorn's life, because as you said, so the short stories, you can't even skip it. Because my first thought was, as I was going through, is I was like, well, this is all well and good, but couldn't we have just published these separately? Since some of these I've even read before. But no, they're all, if it's not something that's directly referenced later, like that first story is directly, if you hadn't read that, you would be so confused when you got to the Magos. But a lot of it's also just color, like, hey, by the way, you should remember this particular character trait about Gregor Eisenhorn. It's very important to know. Like the Master Amos story. Amos?
Yeah, I always said Amos. I'm probably wrong, though.
No. Amos, his savant, and then Imus, the guy who reports.
Imus. Yes, I'm sorry.
Imus, yeah, Master Imus. That story, well, not necessarily it's semi-referenced later in the Magos, but it's very much this is who this person is. And again, at first I was kind of like, oh, interesting. But then it is important because it gives you kind of some color and some memory, especially for me, because I read the Eisenhorn Omnibus 12 years ago. So for me, it was kind of going through this again, and we'll talk about this in a minute. It reopened some old wounds and reminded me of some opinions that I had. And I was like, oh, right, I forgot about all of this. And the Ravener series, because I didn't love the Ravener series, when I got to the end of it, it was kind of out of sight, out of mind. So reading through was, oh, right, I forgot about all of this. And so it was important. So having said that, what was your favorite part? Which there's going to be parts, plural, because with all these short stories.
Man, it's one thing. Okay, so I loved everything that had to do with Valentin Drusher.
His character was great.
But my favorite short story was the strange demise of Titus Endor. Was that? That's it. The strange demise of Titus Endor.
That story, I had read that one previously, but it had been a while, and I think I read it in a collection, or I read it passingly, because as I was reading it, I was a few pages in before I was like, oh, right, this story. And I read the whole thing again, even though I'd already read it, because it's so heartbreaking. Poor Titus. It might be my favorite story in here as well, because if you remember, if you've read the second book, which I think Malleus was the second book,
yes,
Titus and Eisenhorn clearly had this history, and then their history goes bad. And it was just a very, very sad tale about this guy who, not only was he losing his mind, he's clearly not very self-aware.
Right. And the most of the short story, I was like, well, I totally understand where this guy is coming from, like, what's going on, but it's when his interrogator shows up and was like, stop calling me. You can't keep calling me. He's like, where have you been? I've been waiting for you for 14 days. Interrogator's like, Inquisitor. He's like, where's your rosette? It was taken. And it was like, oh my God.
Well, it explains so much, right? Because there were a couple scenes where he showed his rosette and people were like, okay.
Right. It was because there was no rosette.
Exactly. The one guy, he showed it to that one guy who was clearly, well, maybe not the brightest bulb in the box, who, oh, I'm an Inquisitor. Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Right? Because not many people would claim to be an Inquisitor who weren't. Right? And yes, when the Inquisitor shows up, it just, it killed me. Because if you recall, right before that, Titus was talking about how lazy he was, and that he sent a letter off to the Inquisition to be like, don't ever use this guy. And
yeah.
So sad.
Well, and even then I thought it was just, I don't know, like an Alzheimer's,
Right.
Dementia. I was not prepared for it being the same thing that killed his mentor, the Cerebral Worms, which just sounds like an awful way to go.
Ugh, doesn't it? And they talk about when Hapshant is dying, how the worms were coming out of his eyes, and that's when Endor got infected, because he was trying to wipe them away, and Eisenhorn was like, don't touch them. but so awful.
Yeah, but at least his former interrogator knew what it, when he found out, as soon as he found out what it was, he came and got him and said, we're going to take you, and basically kind of placated him. He's like, well, we got to capture this guy. He's like, I'm on it. Like, he didn't even try to correct him anymore. He's just like, I'll take care of it. Let's just go.
Yeah. It was, and I liked that, and I thought that was very interesting, because typically when you're presented with, there's a lot of baggage in the Inquisition, and most of the relationships that we've seen between Inquisitors, it's not necessarily amicable. I mean, the last time we saw Titus Endor, him and Eisenhorn, he was basically trying to turn Eisenhorn in, and Ravener is obviously very angry at Eisenhorn for good reason, and Eisenhorn's kind of on Ravener too. He's disappointed in him. So to see this relationship with this interrogator who's just still really trying to help his former master, I liked that, because it was kind of like, oh, okay, so not all Inquisitors are jerks.
But at the same time, though, just, 2 short stories later, we have Thorn Wishes Talon, where Eisenhorn, reaches out to Ravener using, like, his secret language to give him a warning. Yeah. And Ravener even says, it's very good to see you. And he's like, it's very good to see you, too. And he's like, why'd you risk all this to come warn me? He was like, oh, please, don't flatter yourself, Gideon. You do the same for me. Gregor's just so funny.
He is.
And even Ravener, he was like, you're right. I totally would. Because even though Ravener's done his best to try to distance himself from Gregor, since he's now seen as a radical, and the Ordos of Hereticus is after him, but they're not very good at it.
Well, I would actually argue opposite in the Keeler image, because they set the perfect trap for him.
They did set the trap, but then they didn't seal the deal.
Well, I don't think, because you have to remember that one of the things with Eisenhorn is that he has this theory about the cognate, but because it's so classified, not everybody knows about it, and not everybody believes they're a huge threat. So I don't think they were expecting the cognate to be there. And
which again, that's kind of their problem. That's on them.
Yeah. I also don't think they expected him to have a pet demon.
They should have. That's why Malleus wanted him.
Yeah, that's true. But also, I mean, that story, I love that story because I've read Horus Rising, and Euphrates Keeler is one of the main characters in that book because she's one of the Remembrancers, and she's a really fun character. So I really like that story, and because I love the concept of, is this picture of Horus pre-heresy or post-heresy? Mm-hmm. And because she would have been there for both. And I liked that concept, but mostly I liked it, but also hated it because Eisenhorn's a heretic. But when he calls down the demon host to run rampant through the Inquisition, I mean, he kills a lot of people that day from the Inquisition.
Yeah,
a lot.
He does. But the reason why I'm saying that they're bad at their jobs is, like, not just the Keeler image, but unless they thought that he was dead,
mm-hmm.
they don't seem to be tracking him now.
Well,
of course, I haven't read Pariah, so I don't know.
They kind of are, but you have to remember, Galaxy's a big place. Mm-hmm. Like, there is so much space, and they kind of talk about that in the Magos, because that's actually one of the things that I really liked about the Magos. It was actually probably my favorite part in the Magos, was that when Eisenhorn shows up and he's like, oh, I have an interrogator and I have a savant and I have all of this. I was like, wait a minute. Are you no longer her ex-heretic? Like, have you mended the fences? Like, this is a lot of official stuff for you to have. Mm-hmm. And then I love when Drusher, again, this cemented my love for Drusher, but I loved when he was like, you know what? I don't think this is on the level, because why would they grab me? Like, I'm not world famous. And then when he starts putting all the things together, I was like, oh.
Well, not only that, but
right.
But Harlan Nail, even, I think it was Nail who said, or it was like one of Max's lieutenants or whatever, said, it's because you're the only Magos here. So it was,
right.
So I think a combination of that,
mm-hmm.
and things were just not adding up with him.
Right. Well, remember he says, he's like, wait a minute, you know you're coming here to hunt something. Why would you not get a Magos? Like, surely there are better ones that you would have come prepared with. Because he says, he's like, it's a pretty big gamble to just hope there'd be a really good Magos here. So
right.
That was one of my favorite things, because I love when you're watching a movie or a show or you're reading a book and you're like, this doesn't entirely make sense. And then one of the characters is like, this doesn't make sense. And you're like, oh, good, they thought about it. It's not just some plot hole that I'm just supposed to accept.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked that. It also cemented my love for the Magos character.
Well, let's talk about him, but we need to go on to other questions.
Oh yeah, so the next question I had said was that, and this kind of gets us into Drescher as well, because I think Drescher might be one of the more insightful characters. The previous Eisenhorn omnibus was written all in first-person point of view, a decision that Dan Abnett later deeply regretted. So a lot of these, there are quite a few stories that are first-person, but a lot of them are told third-person point of view from Drescher, like the camera is hovering behind Drescher. How does it change? How does the story change when you're not getting to hear Eisenhorn's inner monologue and his own perspective?
Well, it's not only that, but Thornwish's Talon was not told from either. I mean, it wasn't told from Ravener or Eisenhorn's perspective, because Ravener, in those books, when it's his chapters, is told in first person.
Right.
But I had read Thornwish's Talon before. It might have been in Eisenhorn. It might have been in it might have been in Ravener. I know I had read it before, but I had a little more appreciation of it after having read Ravener now.
Right.
Just for who those people. I mean, I knew who Kara and Harlan Nail were, but Patience and all that.
I love Patience.
But especially because that was like right after we read Patience, her origin story, if you will, like how she joined Ravener. And I think I loved about that is that, I have my own perception of Eisenhorn. And I hate to say it, but this is my perception of Eisenhorn. Because this is how he was in Xenos. I mean, this one, he's a little younger, but he's, young, he's good looking.
Angry.
He's angry. I mean, he's got some of the grizzled features in it. You can tell he's seen some shit.
Yeah.
But that's how I imagine him, and I always forget that bad things happen to the guy, and he's mostly augmetics, and he's lost all of his hair, and the augmetics are bad. He's got these cables coming out the back of his head, which then was making me wonder, was like, well, that says a lot about his former fiancée in Hereticus, that she was happy to be with him again and stay with him, even though he wasn't the handsome young man that he was.
Well, remember, he wasn't messed up that badly, even in Hereticus.
I thought he was.
Like, somewhat, but even not. At least, again, it's been so long.
He was able to walk on his own.
Yeah.
In Hereticus, but he had the cables coming out the back of his head. Because I only had the omnibus. Now seeing the covers of the new separated books, you see that in Hereticus, how he's got no hair and you see the cables.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but no, he's able to walk then, though, because I think it was after the end of Hereticus he lost the ability.
Right, he gets messed up.
Yeah. But just, so Patience, when she first sees Gregor, and all she's been told is all these, because Kara and Harlan talk about how much they miss him, and even Ravener talks about him with big respect. So she was expecting this man to be this grandiose, larger-than-life guy, and then she sees him, and she turns to Kara, and she's like, that's Gregor Eisenhorn? He's just a broken old man. Which then, Kara, rounds on her and is like, okay, I can't argue with the broken and old man part. She said, but you don't cross this guy. And then, you see Gregor just being so blasé about everything, and then going like, hey, Cherubale, do you want to wrap this up so we can go? And Patience like, okay, I see it now. And she kind of shrinks. Shrinks back away from him.
I had I had that exact quote. I had that exact passage because Kara's quote about it was wonderful, where she basically says to him, she's like, I don't really fear a whole lot, but I'm scared of Eisenhorn.
Right.
And then at the end there, yeah, when Patience is like, I understand.
Mm-hmm. And even Drusher, you know, how he first meets Eisenhorn is just wonderful. It's like almost right out of a sitcom.
Oh, I do love it. I think there's something you wanted to tell me.
Right. After what he says outside the door, I was like, well, like,
yeah.
Whoever running this, they're a complete idiot. And I'll tell them to their face. And once in
I found it.
Okay.
I found it. Where Kara shrugged. I don't know about the demon host. He fought it and hated it for so long, and then, I don't know. Maybe he's become the radical they say, but you're wrong about him being a broken old man. Well, he's broken and he's old, but I'd rather go up against Ravener unarmed than ever cross Gregor Eisenhorn. It'd be really bad to go up against Ravener unarmed. But
it would be, I mean, you could kick the chair.
If he lets you get that close to him.
Right.
Remember, he's like the most powerful psychic. Well, one of the most powerful psychics.
You just got to stick that limiter on there.
Right.
And then you can kick the chair all you want.
Exactly. Like, I got a blunter. Yeah, pretty much.
But even Drusher, even then, he's not impressed, which was so unusual, you know, because Eisenhorn, he still has his rosette. The Inquisition has not come for him and taken it away like they did to Titus Endor, and like he has this imposing power, and Nail is with him, and you know, still being his heavy lifter, I guess, and he seems all very official, but he's just not very impressed with him. Like, he has no problem telling him his point of view at all times and chastising him when he won't help people.
Yeah.
Because Eisenhorn, and I think all Inquisitors do this, they see the big picture.
Omelets and eggs. Too.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, I'm sorry that everyone might die in this, but I have to stop this to save the universe, pretty much. And Drusher has no problems calling him out on it, but at the same time, he still thinks of him as a friend, even though Gregor keeps saying, I don't have friends.
Right, so a couple things on that. One of the things that's really interesting through most of this is that typically with the first person point of view stories, you really get to hear his inner monologue and kind of what he's thinking, and a lot of times it's his justifications for his behavior, and that kind of helps color it, right? Where when you don't have that, it seems even more callous. But at about, well, I don't know, almost toward about a quarter of the end of the Magos, after he's been injected with that virulent, he then starts going kind of on his own walkabout, and he gets lost in his own mind. And it was interesting to see him going and visiting the ghosts of his friends and having them basically be like, you don't care about anybody. You've never cared about anybody. We weren't even your friends. Like, we were your friend, but you weren't our friend. And somehow when you don't have Eisenhorn's internal monologue of him, you don't really get to see how he's reacting to any of this, or see, like, the part that killed me is, and I think I have it marked here and easy to find, was when he comes across Midas Venticor.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. And let's see. What kind of man uses his friends that way? Asked Loris Vibin. No one uses his friends that way, Vibin said Midas. You had a daughter too, Vibin said to him. Oh, I'm sure she'll be here at any moment, said Midas. He took a sip of his drink. Won't she, Gregor? My sweet little Medea. It can't be much longer before she joins the party too. And Gregor really has no reaction to any of this, which is so Gregor in some ways. But it's so interesting to hear all this vitriol coming at him from all of his friends. But it's all said very matter-of-factly. It's like, this is just how you are. This is who you are. And I think it made him seem even colder, because we have no idea how he was reacting to any of this.
Right. Well, it doesn't help that he's lost all, you know, nerve feelings in his face, so he doesn't have expressions.
Until the end of the book.
Well, yes, we'll get to the end of the book. Okay, you know what? That part right there probably creeped me out the most out of anything in this entire book. And that includes the first short story, Pestilence.
Right. Oh, God. That story.
Yeah.
But, again, that Nurgle's so hot right now. But when they say the word and everyone go... That story had one of the creepiest things in here, and I want to point that out really quickly, just because we mentioned it. When the guy who has all the lights on, or all the dark, it's all dark because he's terrified of the light, and then you discover later that he's been blind for like 20 years, but the memory of the light still scares him. I was like, that's some dark Warhammer stuff right there for you. But the only person to whom Eisenhorn really has a reaction is Elizabeth.
Right.
When she starts talking to him, that's the only time that we see a crack in his facade, which I think is probably very telling of his character. But again, without that inner monologue, it's just, it adds this layer of even colder than Gregor Eisenhorn already was.
Right, because, I mean, he may have been thinking a million things at that time.
Right.
He may have been having his own reactions inside. Because, you know, he's very big on being stoic, and it's not just because of he's lost all feeling in his face. That's just how he is. That's why he's always been such a good inquisitor, is by keeping that completely stoic face. But like you said, we've always been inside of his head. So while he's being so stoic, at least then I would fully know exactly what was going on. If this was really he's seeing ghosts, which obviously it's not, because not everybody there was dead, was actually dead. Because he saw Harlan Nail there, and Nail's not dead.
But he thought Nail was dead.
Right, which is why I'm thinking, it's like, is this all like this? It was the warp bringing out basically every bad thing he thinks of himself. And was bringing it up.
That's kind of what I thought. Because at first I was like, oh, this is all really interesting. And it's when Nail shows up, all of a sudden my first thought was, oh my God, this is what Gregor thinks / knows. So I think I was a little shocked that, honestly, even though we've been inside of his head a lot inside of stories and books, I didn't think he had that much self-reflection. Because he's so far in denial with some things.
Okay.
But then to see all of this, I was like, oh man, you're actually very much aware of how you seem and how you are.
Maybe just to be an inquisitor, he's had to pack all that away. Like he just
that
can't,
could be.
He can't obsess over it.
That could be for sure. But kind of, so one of the questions I had also posed was, the timeline of this book is everywhere. Just like literally everywhere.
Well, thank God for the little chronology in the back.
Oh my gosh.
The table of contents is not chronological.
Well, it kind of is, because it tells you that Regia Culta takes place, then Xenos.
Right. But there's a chronology in the back that lists the year.
Yes, it does have the years,
and
which
so,
is good too.
Because of that, I learned that the way that the book is laid out, which one is it? I think it's the Curiosity is out of place in the timeline. Yes. Because the Curiosity takes place after Ravener Rogue and before Thornwish's Talon. And instead this one had Thornwish's Talon after the Curiosity. And that may not seem that important, but when I kind of reread them, I was like, no, that actually is important.
Right. Yeah, no, the table of contents and the chronology were very helpful. In fact, there were a few times that I had to either go to the chronology or flip back to the table of contents, because I was like, wait a minute, which book came first? And then I think it was the Keeler image that, in relation to the Gardens of Tycho and Perihelion.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely needed to have a little bit of clarification there. Because I found myself reading it thinking, when? And I think it's really important too, because again, the Keeler image, it's very important to know that happens just a few, it happens 10 years before the Magos, but that asks there's a lot of questions in there too.
Well, yeah, I knew it took place after Hereticus.
Right, obviously that. But just 10 years before this story. So he has massacred a whole bunch of the Inquisition right before this happens, more or less. Relatively speaking, right?
And it also means that maybe that really taxed him greatly because, as he told Medea, he couldn't bring Cerebral with him this time.
Yep. Which seemed a little convenient.
Well, but if you saw him, he was greatly taxed the entire time. And I'm sure some of that was, from saying some of the unwords so they could get in to this fortress that's out of time and space. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but the loom. I think I'd say about Dan Abnett, the way he was writing this with the loom, I was getting a friggin' headache.
Yes.
Because I almost felt like I could hear it myself.
Mm-hmm. His descriptor words are very good. And he did a really good job of creating this, because they describe it as it being this very oppressive presence, right? Mm-hmm. That you can't escape from. And just the way that he keeps reminding you of it, but not like in a way where he's like, oh, it was really loud. It was really loud. Did I mention this is really loud? There's so much noise right now. It feels very natural because people are constantly like, oh God, my head. I had the same reaction too, where I was like, they need to leave. They need to leave now.
It kind of reminded me of that feeling that you get when you're on a plane and you're right above the engine. Or
yes.
too close to the bulwark in the back. Mm-hmm. It's just that constant hum that will give you a headache after a while.
Yes, exactly. That's a good way of explaining it. That's kind of how I imagined it, but take that to 11.
Well, yes. Especially when, they get Sark in it and he makes it go faster and faster.
Yes. So that's a good bridge over to the next question, which was that because the loom is such a big piece of this. Eisenhorn's always been a bigger picture kind of guy, kind of, as we said, the omelets and eggs sort of philosophy. Has that changed, and how does this make him different from other Warhammer 40k characters? I would say it definitely hasn't changed.
No, it hasn't changed, but it doesn't make it different from other 40k characters. That's hard because I think that they're all big picture people in their own way.
Right. I think the part that was most telling for me is, so once Eisenhorn he's standing in that cage controlling the loom, and he's revving it up, and he starts telling everybody psychically, he's like, this is wonderful. I'm going to be able to use this, and we're going to be able to stop the arch enemy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to deal a major blow. And the Magos is like, wait a minute. This thing unmakes reality. You don't really understand what that means. Nobody does. And it could be lying to you, telling you that it's not going to be a big deal. So you could essentially hurt the Imperium more by doing this one small victory, because you don't really know what this does. And Eisenhorn, no, I totally know, and it would be worth it anyways.
Right.
Yikes! At this point, you're literally saying, I'm going to use a tool of chaos to unmake reality for the greater good.
I don't even know if he really fully realized how it was going to unmake reality or not. He just saw he found a way to get to the king in yellow and kill mm-hmm. him, and that would be it. And then I don't know if he figured he just could walk out of the loom after that and everything would just be hunky-dory. So I don't really know how serious he took it, but he tells Drescher afterwards, you were right. Me staying in there would have been mm-hmm. worse.
Right.
Now, did I like it? He used the loom. He turned it against everybody in there who'd forced him to be able to work it. Yes, I thought that was wonderful that he brought those skeletons back to life to go after Gobleka. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, I have a big soft spot for the King in Yellow. It's one of those things that I think if you were to go back in time and tell Chambers that like this is going to be referenced for like the next several hundred years. Well, it's only been like a little over 100, but anyways, like I think he would have been like, really? It's kind of like the British Lovecraft in some way. That
okay, so you must know who this King in Yellow is.
So the King in Yellow, it's actually a series of short stories that was published in the late 1800s, and I think it actually was referencing a play. But in this, there's this King in Yellow, which is introduced as this supernatural, malevolent entity, right? And it gets referenced a lot in surprising places. Actually, True Detective season 1 references the King in Yellow too, which I think kind of brought it to the forefront. So now, like once you say the King in Yellow, I find that I run into more people who are like, oh yeah, isn't that from True Detective? I'm kind of familiar with that now. So it's kind of like Cthulhu in so much as it started in this one place and now like a lot of people reference it. So when I saw it in here, you know how like when you watch Archer, all the little literary references they make that you really laugh about and it doesn't surprise you that they were English majors? Dan Abnett does a lot of little stuff like that, which tells you that he has a very deep and abiding love and knowledge of literature. So when I saw the King in Yellow, I was like, oh, you.
Now, this is actually the first time I'd heard it. Well, because I didn't. Really liked it. I mean, I didn't watch a True Detective, and
we had to read The King in Yellow in college. A professor of mine, it was like his favorite thing in the world. He was a major Anglophile, and so that was one of the things that we did. But so that was how I knew that cultural touch point. But I really liked seeing it in here. I think it fits wonderfully in the Warhammer 40k universe. The concept that there's this chaos entity out there waiting. I was like, oh. Because I always joke about one of the things that I love about the Warhammer 40k universe is that everything is canon. Star Trek, canon. Firefly, canon. Nobody knows what happened before the long night. So the idea that the King in Yellow, canon. It all fits. It's wonderful. Anyways. But yeah, I think the thing that scared me the most is, to your point, he was so obsessed with destroying this King in Yellow. Nobody knows what this loom does. Really.
Right, or what's gonna happen when he does kill the King in Yellow. You know, don't you need to like make sure, like you got to see like how the House of Cards is built before you just rip out the foundation?
Yes.
Like, when all you want to do is remove the roof?
Right, exactly.
You know, so yes. But again, you know, thanks to Drusher, you know, just basically just talking to him, it's like, I'm not your friend, but you're my friend, and I'm telling you, this is not good. What does he say? He says that it's going to unmake the fabric of reality. We don't know how that works. And he looks over at, I don't remember who it was. I think it was Voriat, and was like, is that right? He's like, yeah, pretty much.
Yes. And I think that makes him a little different because we see a lot of Inquisitors who do very unsavory things. We actually see a lot of characters who do very unsavory things. And I would definitely say because in the Imperium, because they have so many people, Guilliman's the same way too, right? I mean, all the Space Marines are the same thing where it's like, okay, you know, sure, we're going to kill 1 million people, but we'll save like 20 billion. So bigger picture kind of people, but actually using a machine this isn't even like something that was corrupted. This is straight up Warcraft.
Right, something that they didn't think was even possible to be made.
You had to use a chaos language to get to it. It's not even in this plane of reality. It is 100% a chaos engine, a demon engine at this point. I mean, I guess once you've made friends with a demon, like...
Didn't you like it how nice Trubail was to him?
No.
That was creepy.
No, I didn't like it. And you know why.
Oh, I know. It was just, yeah, that
We'll
was,
talk about that.
yeah, just.
Yes, there was, what is it? I think it's when he calls Cerebral down at one point, and Cerebral is just like cooing at him. He's like, oh, my dear sweet Eisenhorn. Yes, my Gregor, do you need me to come and kill lots of people for you? Yes, I said with great reluctance.
Oh, that was the Keeler image.
I didn't quite hear that, Gregor. Yeah, I like that. I like the fact that he made him talk to him psychically.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the fact that he's come to an accord with a demon.
Well, but Eisenhorn even says, "Why are you being so nice to me?"
Because you're a heretic.
Because you're like in the middle of this warp loom, and Turbail's like, "Oh, I'm gonna finally be freed. Like, this is gonna be so cool. I will kill so many people."
Right. Well, yes, all of that, and that was actually another interesting thing. I mean, they do go down that rabbit hole of exploring the fact that you were always a heretic. This was like predestined. This wasn't like you got corrupted over the years. You were right for this happening.
But that was all going on when he got the antigen. Mm-hmm. So is that him? That's his feelings about himself, all that self-doubt and all that coming up in him? Is that what that is? Or, well, I mean, was it like you're always your worst critic?
That's true. This book made me realize something about myself, by the way. Previously, when I looked at like the Warhammer 40k universe, I was always like, I like the Adeptus Mechanicus. I would want to be part of the Adeptus Mechanicus. After reading this book, I think I would be better.
You want to be like part robot?
Yes.
Well, ew.
I'm always joking about wanting my bionic eye. But I discovered after reading this book, I would be a prime candidate for the Adeptus Sororitas. Because I have a very hard-nosed look at chaos. This is a heretic. I would full-on be one of the bolter bitches setting him to flame and not feel guilty about it.
See, and I would be Voriat. I would be Voriat,
heretic.
Spying on him.
Heretics.
To
Heretics
see,
everywhere.
see how bad of a heretic he is. I guess because I'm not seeing the heresy. I can't see the heresy black and white.
He's friends with a literal demon.
I don't call them friends. It's more like he kind of caged him up.
And sicked him on Inquisitors.
They were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Hey, they would have.
Oh my god!
Yeah, you know what?
This sounds like heresy to me.
They were willing to kill everybody at that auction house to get to one person.
He was willing to unmake a section of reality to kill one dude.
That's right,
my god!
Thanks to Drusher, he didn't do it, and he was like, "Okay, that was bad. I shouldn't have done it. I do need to go see about Elizabeth's daughter."
Right. That's, oh my goodness. So, okay, speaking of Elizabeth, the band more or less gets back together. Now, it's hard to say the band gets back together because really the Magos, the only person who's still with them is Harlan Nail. I have questions. But with all these stories, we get to relive all of these people, right? So, who were you most happy to see? Who were you surprised not to see? Who were you wanting to show the door?
Well, it's hard to say because I haven't read the last two books of the Ravener trilogy.
Right.
So I have some questions about where some people are, but I don't want to ask because I'm one of those weird people that, yes, I like to find things out on my own.
Right.
So, of course, my first thing would be to wonder, well, why isn't Kara there? But I have a feeling if I read the rest of Ravener, I might find that out. I guess it's hard for me to say who I wish was there because they're all dead. His Savant. I always liked his Savant.
Oh, I loved Amos. Oh my gosh, I loved Amos.
I always did like him, and
I was so happy to see him in the beginning when
mm-hmm.
they're I can't remember. Oh, it's with the number story with Master Amos.
Mm-hmm.
When Amos just starts rattling off all this information.
Right.
Oh, I missed you, Amos.
Oh God, I liked Amos so much. So,
I
but
do.
but he's dead. Obviously Ravener's not with him. Um, so Nail was there. Fishig.
So,
Elizabeth's not there.
yeah, Elizabeth, obviously. But, so.
Although I was happy that one short story.
Yes.
The two of them
that's actually my favorite short story. The back cloth for a coin.
For an additional crown.
For a crown additional.
Oh my gosh, that's like such an amazing horror story.
The reason, so I think we've had this conversation before, but one of my favorite horror games of all time was Fatal Frame 2, which deals with the camera obscura. So I have certain themes and stuff that just I gravitate toward, and cameras are one of them. So Backcloth has always been one of my favorite short stories, and not just in the Eisenhorn universe, just like in the Warhammer 40k universe in general. It's one of my favorites because it's a wonderful horror story, and you get to the end and you're just like, clever.
Yeah.
But so I read Eisenhorn like 12 years ago, and I remember getting to the end of Eisenhorn and being livid, but I couldn't remember why, because it's been a really long time. And then I read that short story, and then I remembered my favorite character in the Eisenhorn trilogy was Godwin Fishig. Absolutely loved Fishig. Justice for Fishig. I got to it and I was reading in bed, and I got to that story and I got to Fishig and I was like, oh, you son of a bitch. And my husband was like, oh, you remembered why you're angry, did you? Oh, justice for Fishig.
So it just shows like what a horrible person I am, because honestly what happened to Fishig didn't really faze me very much, and I forgot all about it. And so he said something, I was like, I don't remember that at all. And I went and picked up I think I went and read like on the Wikipedia, just looked up Fishig and was like, oh yeah, I do kind of remember that.
Yeah. And then it made me really sad because all of these scenes that are in here with Cherubel, I was like, oh my God, this probably looks like some really awful, like kind of like in how I picture him looking is, you remember in Dragon Age Inquisition when the mages would turn into abominations?
Yeah, that's how I imagined it looking too.
Yeah, they're kind of half human, kind of half demon thing. With Fishig, my favorite character.
Have you ever seen drawings of Cherubel as a demon host?
No, actually I haven't.
Yeah, they're in the I don't remember if they're in the Lexicanum or if it's in the wiki, but they yeah, it's not pretty.
No, I would expect not. Right? But I had pictures of my favorite character looking like one of the Dragon Age Inquisition abominations, and I was like, this is all just awful. It was very traumatizing.
And I think because I was kind of understanding where Eisenhorn was coming from through most of the trilogy. All right, just chill, okay? The way that I think, I'm not for certain, but I think what was going through my head at that time, which just doesn't make it any better, but that Eisenhorn was trying to save his own skin is what he was doing. Because Fishig was going to basically tell on him.
Because Eisenhorn asked him to. He was like, you got to keep me in check, buddy. And when Fishig was like, I'm trying to keep you in check, then Eisenhorn was like, well, not like for real.
Not for realsies.
Yeah, obviously I wasn't serious about it.
And like, just, because I remember Eisenhorn was trying to talk him out of it. And couldn't convince him. And I guess it was one of those, if you can't beat him, join him, or force them to join you.
Yeah.
So to me, it was almost kind of like, him just going, shh, 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 like that wonderful scene of Band of Brothers when he's sticking that knife into him and telling him to be quiet.
Yes. Actually, yeah, that's a really good analogy of it. I was also really happy to see Patience. I always loved Patience.
You know, the sad thing with the Ravener book is that I didn't like it, and I kept getting her and Kara mixed up because the characters bored me in Ravener.
I I don't like Kara Swole as a character. And one of the things that I don't like about her, and I don't know if you've ever noticed this, is that she can't ever appear without Abnett mentioning how voluptuous she is. Like, that's her primary defining trait to him, is that this voluptuous woman, this surprisingly voluptuous woman, he mentions it a lot.
I just never noticed it, I guess.
Well, it really seems to be her primary defining trait. Like, everybody else has these really cool things about them, like Harlan Nale. Yeah, he describes how big Harlan Nale is a lot, but Harlan Nale has a very distinct character to him. Patience is a distinct character. Kara, a little bit in Ravener, she gets a little bit of more characterization.
She's a dancing assassin.
Yeah, an ex-circus performer. Assassin.
Right, she wears skin-tight clothing, or as they call them, the body gloves.
Yeah, as I said, like, her physical being is really, like, her primary defining characteristic, which I'm always like, that's just kind of, it feels so out of place with everything else. Because, like, Elizabeth, he mentions that he finds her attractive and that she's kind of sexy, but Elizabeth had so much more depth to her, right? All of his female characters do. Kara feels so oddly flat. I can't figure out what's going on there.
Well, see, Patience always did to me, too, which is why I kept confusing them. It's like, I just see you two girls, just, I know one of y'all has telekinetic powers, and the other one's like this acrobatic chick with knives. But it just seems like you guys are almost the same person because you're still angry. Neither one of you likes to be touched. You get pissy really easily. I can't figure you two out. And it didn't help the fact that the whole time I'm reading the book, I'm going, why are you letting these people on your ship? Don't they scream shady fucks to you? Oh no, they betrayed us. Whoever saw this coming? The answer is everybody.
That's okay. That is one complaint about the Magos. I don't know if it's just because we're so used to genre tropes, or if we knew that nothing was going to go evenly. I felt like his new savant, as soon as they introduced her, I was like, oh, this woman's not on the level. And then when she betrayed them, I was like, oh, are we surprised? No.
Well, here's my thing about her. I dropped my book. So I lost my place. So I'm there grabbing my book and flipping, trying to find it. And I happened to open up to the page where it had Drescher saying, how long were you betraying us?
Oh, no.
Like, oh. Well, shit.
No, that sucks.
And, like, I knew I didn't like her. But now looking back on that, did I always not like her? Did I always suspect her? Or is it because I got this spoiled ahead of time and then expected it? I mean, she wasn't a nice person.
No.
But I attributed that to, because I guess how smart she was for being able to read so many books. And not only that, I just thought it was so great that Drescher just, happened to remember something and was looking through this guy's journals. This guy's biology journals, and was all like, oh wait, hold on a second. And which then I think it was Voriat turned to her and was like, and you didn't pick that up?
Eisenhorn does, because remember, Eisenhorn looks at her and he's like, in a journal on paper.
Well, I thought Voriat said something to her too.
I don't remember if he did, but I remember Eisenhorn's just like glaring at her the whole time, which I think that was the point where I was like, there's a traitor. And so here's one question that I have. I don't know why Nale was with Eisenhorn. I was happy to see him again because I've always loved Harlan Nale. And for the hardcore Abnett fans,
he was there in the Keeler image.
You're not one of them. I'm just kidding. One of the big debates online, like one of the silly debates, is who would win in a fight, Harlan Nale or McVinner? And the answer is obviously Harlan Nale because he has character development and McVinner doesn't. Come at me. My husband and I have this debate regularly because he's Team McVinner. But
I don't even know who that is, so.
It's one of the Gaunt's characters.
Ah, okay.
Anyways. I really love Harlan Nale, so I was so happy to see him in here, but I don't know why he was with Eisenhorn, because Nale left Eisenhorn's service because he kind of says that in the Ravner books. He's kind of like, Eisenhorn's not in a good place right now. So he's working with Ravner. Without spoiling anything, I understand why he's no longer in Ravner's employ. But the fact that he went back to Eisenhorn, it's like if you divorce your husband because he's abusive, and then you get with this guy who's abusive, so you go back to your abusive husband. I think he's a glutton for punishment.
Well, if you remember in Thorn Wishes Talon, when Nale and Kara both see him, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. And they shake hands and hug. So, I wasn't, even though I've read Ravener, I wasn't really sure why Harlan Nale left Eisenhorn. Well, I guess I felt like I missed the memo. When did Harlan and Kara leave Eisenhorn? And now they're with Ravener, and we should just understand that. And they took Elizabeth with them. Okay. Okay, sure. I don't remember that happening in Hereticus.
Well, the Ravner books set up that it definitely happened sometime after Hereticus, but before the Ravner books. So, and you have to remember that there's a big swath of time in there, right? And the way that
it's just
found was that
it just made me feel like, did I miss some stories in there?
Right, no, for sure.
Did something happen? Because, most people seemed fine at the end of Hereticus. I mean, the end of Hereticus was not fine, but they seemed fine. So I guess for me, it was not much of a surprise. But then again, I haven't read the last two Ravner books. And thanks to the Magos, I have so many questions now about what has happened to Ravner that I am now reading the second two Ravner books.
Oh, good.
That's not what you said when I first read Ravner. You're like, oh, they're not good.
Well, so there is a conversation that I really want to have about a specific character in this book. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything or possibly alert you or taint your opinion. But there's a conversation to have about a specific character in here. Because something happens at the end of this book. It's actually when, at the very end, when Eisenhorn smiles, there's another character that something very similar happens with.
Oh, really? Okay.
It ain't good.
Okay. Well, no, when he, because when he smiled talking to Rubael, and I figured because it was all in his mind.
Right.
I just kind of dismissed that. But then when he smiled to Drescher, and Drescher said, I didn't know you could do that. And he's like, I haven't in a very long time. And Drescher's probably just thinking, oh, because he's been a dick most of his life.
Right. You've always just been a big jerk.
Right. I mean, that's true, but that's not why he's, hasn't smiled in 400 years. But, yeah, that right there, just I almost had the same reaction there that I did when I got to the end of Pet Sematary when I read it when I was younger. Because at the very end when it said darling, it said, I about threw the book across the room. I was like, get that away from me. Yeah, that's kind of how I felt.
I love Pet Sematary. Yeah, that was creepy. And that was the point at which I was like, heretic. Actually, my husband and I at lunch today, we had a big debate about that. We talked so much about Warhammer 40k. It's stupid. But I guess, the Nale thing. I was really surprised to see Nale with, I don't know if it was just, and because again, they never really cover it in the Ravner books, at least not that I remember. Maybe I just don't remember this conversation. But when asked about it, they're kind of like, oh, he's really not in a good place right now since he's on the run and stuff like that. And I actually got the impression that everybody had abandoned him. Medea's with them.
I got the impression at the end of Hereticus that no one abandoned Eisenhorn. He abandoned everybody.
That too.
Because his former fiance was cool with him staying with her. Mm-hmm. And to his credit, he was like, this isn't right because I still love Elizabeth. But I mean, he just, and he talks about in the Hereticus how he just disappeared. So and he talked about no one knows if he's dead or alive, and so I was like, well, maybe he did die at the end of it, because I remember in reading Ravener, when Nail mentioned, because I think when we went to go say hi to Elizabeth, and he mentioned, he was like, yes, it was back when we were with Ravener, and someone's like, where is he now? He's just like, it's like, I don't know, we don't even know if he's dead. I'm like,
yeah.
It's like, okay, I mean, he was 400 years old, so it makes sense to me. I mean, yes, I know about the rejuvenate treatments and being in the warp and blah, 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 but still, that's still old.
Yeah, no, for sure. I did like that when Drusher's talking about how young she is, and she's like, I'm 260 years old, by the way.
Right.
BT dubs. No, I really liked, I loved Neil. I was glad to see him. It was a little weird to me, which this is neither here nor there, but you did remind me. My favorite romance is Warhammer 40k romance, because you have like Drescher and Max, where it's this really cute.
Oh my god, they're so adorable.
They were so adorable. Which, yes, I do have a very deep, abiding girly side, even though I like my violent militaristic science fiction. But yeah, I even said, like, after I read that first short story, I was like, if they don't end up together, I'm going to burn this book. They were just so cute and adorable, and I like.
Yeah, after you said that, and because it was right after, it was like the day after I started reading the Magos, and like the first chapter is like, he must be talking about the 3 years we were married. I'm like, oh.
I know, I was
Jen's
so
going to be so sad.
I love when Voriat appears at the end, and he's like, oh, Max told me where to find you, and Drescher's like, she remembers how to get here. It's like, those two are getting back together, I'm telling you now.
Well, yeah, but when he was going through the money sack, and he was like, it's like, I could go buy a nice place in Tycho Gardens, and he's actually thinking about his future, like, in a positive way.
Yes.
I loved it when he made some comment about, he's like, they're going to need an expert on blah, 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 beetle. So we're going to have a problem here.
Oh, yeah.
In the next couple of years.
Oh, no, I loved it. And, like, Abnett actually has several. I loved the Elizabeth and Eisenhorn romance, which I think is why I ate it up so much when he sees her in here.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's like, did it never occur to you why you fell in love with me?
The one person you can't touch.
It really killed me, but when she's imploring him, like, please go do this. Oh my god, that just killed me. I love the Warhammer romance because it's always very understated. There's a great one in the Night Lords omnibus too.
Yeah, that actually made me the saddest about what happened to Ravener. I was like, oh my god, and his fiance died. It's like, he has no skin or face. I'm like, but his fiance's dead.
Well, because he was deeply in love with her. And
yes,
as you read all of the Ravener books, he's still that was a very defining moment for him. And he still wrestles with it. Which, I love that. But
I'd wrestle with being this, like, I don't know, hunk of meat in an enclosed chair.
Right. But, then you go on to write the most famous book in the entirety of the Imperium, The Spheres of Longing. They, so The Spheres of Longing, long before he wrote Ravener, when you're reading the Gaunt's Ghost books, that's one of the things, like, to mark that somebody's very educated. They'll be like, oh, I read The Spheres of Longing by Gideon Ravener. And then I can't remember what book it was. I think it might have been by Dembski Bowden. Somebody mentions, like, somebody says something and somebody is like, yeah, I've also read The Spheres of Longing. So as soon as it made it outside of a Dan Abnett book, I was like, oh, this is amazing.
I was going to say, because Dan Abnett wrote Gaunt's Ghost books, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Like all 16 of them. It was kind of like when Uriel showed up in Guy Haley's book, and you're just like, this is amazing. I love it. I love crossover stuff when people appear in other places. It just makes me giddy. But so the burning question. If you had to cast this book as a movie, I vote for Mark Strong as Eisenhorn.
Well, he was already the voice of Eisenhorn in that terrible PC game, so
we don't talk about that.
So why not? And we already know he can look old and broken and weird.
And mean. He has a very he has a very cruel he has resting cruel face.
Resting cruel face.
Well, that's kind of what you need. Like, it's not resting bitch face. It's like resting, I am gonna really mess you up right now. You really see it in Shazam. Like, a lot of times when he's just staring, like, oh.
Or, honestly, just look at the cover of the Eisenhorn Omnibus. That is resting cruel face. It's like, I am mad and I'm going to fuck all of you up. Oh, so no, here he kind of looks almost hopeful for the future. Looks a little grizzled.
I don't get that at all.
He looks a little grizzled, but
grim.
But it's not as in the Eisenhorn Omnibus cover, where it is just basically like, you would not believe what I have seen, and I'm going to fuck some shit up.
He looks very tired on the Eisenhorn.
That's true.
I vote for Mark Strong for Eisenhorn.
Okay, I'm fine with Mark Strong for Eisenhorn.
That's as far as I got.
Okay, so Harlan Nail.
Oh, God.
So we need a big guy. So I guess either The Rock or Vin Diesel.
Vin Diesel, probably, because The Rock, bless his heart, he doesn't have that edge to him.
No, he's too cute.
He has that cuteness, but he just has that, and I think especially after seeing him in Jumanji, he's just too much of kind of a teddy bear guy. I can't really see him. Like, even when he was a villain, got to learn a little bit about me. Back in the old days when he was a villain in WWE, or WWF back then, back when he was even trying to be a villain, he was never very antagonistic. He was always just a little too personable for it. Vin Diesel, like, if you watch like the Chronicles of Riddick, that's really how I picture Harlan Nail.
And Vin Diesel has resting bitch face.
Yeah, he does. Like, boss level.
Yeah.
Not as much as Michelle Rodriguez. I think she still is my, like, top level. I would love to cast her in a Warhammer 40k book. I really would, but I can't think of who I would put her as. Nobody in this book, I don't think.
No. All right, so...
Too rough for Max.
What about... So we got Max and Drusher.
Max and Drusher. For Max, you need somebody who's tough and authoritarian, but also kind of playful. Because she has a good sense of humor about her, right? When she starts flirting with him almost immediately. Which is wonderful, too. Which is another reason I really liked her. Who, though? I don't know who really fits that bill.
I don't remember the actress's name, but for some reason, the actress who was in SWAT. Colin Farrell, Samuel L. Jackson.
Oh, I do remember that movie. What is her name? Gotta picture her damn face too.
I don't remember what it was, but she was just this. But she had that light side to her. She could be funny and snarky,
right?
But at the same time, she was not afraid to fight back.
Oh my God, what was her name?
Really cute face.
Yeah. Oh God, I have to go to IMDb for this now. There was Michelle Rodriguez was in that, but then there was the other woman, and I can't think of her name right now because Michelle Rodriguez was the other main girl, and I adore her. I really do. I don't know who I would put as Max. And you also have to have somebody who's a little older. Well, actually, I guess at this point, Michelle Rodriguez probably is. I still picture her like from her early career. Actually, do you know who I think might work really well as her? She's not as old, but
so it was Michelle Rodriguez is who I was thinking of.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, I told you I absolutely love that woman. She's even a badass bitch in real life. There was a great story of her where she was arrested and she could either go to jail or do community service, so she went to jail because she didn't want to have to do community service.
Dang.
That's hard. That's hardcore. But actually, do you know who I could picture being Max is another oh God, what is her name? She's really cute. She's really funny. Gina Rodriguez. She's another one I could picture. Is that because she can be really tough? I don't know if you saw a movie called Annihilation. In that she's kind of tough and yeah, she's fun. For Drusher, you need somebody who's very firm and serious, but also kind of not as brawny.
And has a comical side, I would think.
Right. Indeed. Trying to think. Who is someone... I can't even think of anyone right now.
How about Ralph Fiennes?
No, Ralph Fiennes has too much of an edge to him. Like, I don't think of him as English Patient. I always think of him as, I hate to say it, I think of him as Voldemort.
I think of him now as Lego Alfred.
Well, that's wonderful. Oh, man, if it was like 20 years ago, I would almost say, shoot, he also played Alfred in the in Justice League and Batman versus Superman.
Oh, Jeremy Irons. Yeah, but
like 20 years ago, though.
Yeah, but 20 years ago, he was Die Hard 3. I mean, he's got it.
Yeah, that's true. He does have an edge to him.
Yes.
Yeah, you want to talk about a person with an edge. God, I don't even know. Just go crazy and give him Woody Harrelson.
Sure.
A little too sardonic.
You know, at this point, why not? But the sad thing is, Woody Harrelson has been in so many things, but all I can think of him in is Cheers.
Yes, he's forever Woody.
Yeah.
Well, he's forever Woody, but so I think it just shows like that generation that we're of. So I think of him from Cheers. I think of him from the cinematic masterpiece, Natural Born Killers. And then now I think of him from Zombieland. Like there's the three phases of Harrelson. Like goofy, what? And then goofy, but also not messing around.
See, and I think of him from Cheers, The People versus Larry Flint.
Oh, God, I forgot about that.
Which the whole time I was going, this isn't right. On so many levels. And then Zombieland.
Yes. Well, there's actually a movie on Netflix right now called Highwaymen.
Sean's watching that right now.
It's very good.
He loves
It's not like an amazing story. It's just basically trying to take the tarnish or take the shine off of Bonnie and Clyde because they were not good people. Who saw Woody Harrelson becoming like a serious, respectable actor? Literally nobody. That's who. But all right. So what burning questions do we have for the sequel's a strong word, whatever book comes next, because I got a few.
Well, I mean, technically the next book's already out.
Yes, the Pariah series. Mm-hmm. Yes, that's true.
And from reading, I think it was the intro to this one? It had to have been.
Was it?
It must have been where Dan Abnett said that, he was talking about how books to be written are like people hanging out on his couch.
Right.
And he talked about how the next two books in the Pariah, he's like, they're there, they're waiting their turn.
Right.
So it didn't sound like this, was going to be one of them.
Right. Yes. So the biggest question that I have is that he smiles at the end of the book, and the very last line of the book is that when Drusher is with the bird, which I think is just wushy, he says, the lamplight caught its dark and bottomless eyes. For a moment, they reflected a violet flash. It was almost exactly the same shade of violet that Drusher had seen in Eisenhorn's eyes when the Inquisitor had smiled at him for the first and last time.
Mm-hmm.
He warp-touched. Now, my husband was very quick to point out that everybody on Cadia had violet eyes. That was because they lived
right by the Eye of Terror.
Yeah. And well, on one hand, yes, the Cadians were a hardy race of people. Like seriously, they were hard. Like,
oh well, yeah.
Maybe slightly less hardcore than the deathcore of Krieg or the Catachan. Anyways, doesn't matter. They're all up there in the top or upper echelon.
They're also all dead, except for a few.
The planet broke before the guard did.
That it is very, very true.
But the guard did break. Not very adeptus sororitas of me, was it?
So I just saw grinning Abaddon when you said that.
So, but he's definitely, I mean, that's, look, you don't get a, well, I guess, what would you call it? I mean, they had an actual name for it, but it's basically condensed Nurgle. You don't get that put in you, go on a walkabout in your mind, try to use a demon engine, come out suddenly healed, and having the flash of the warp in your eyes and not be a little fundamentally changed, maybe a little, like,
well, you can smile for starters,
right? Like, and my husband was like, "Oh, it's just cured him. It just cured him." Yeah, I can think of something else that got cured. Damn it! No, never mind. Anyways, that's important to another book. But no, I can. Yeah, there's
now the bird. I wonder if the bird is an accident, or did Eisenhorn touch the bird so the bird could watch the Magos?
Right. That was, I had the same thought, because if you remember, the bird had no interest. In the beginning, the Magos actually talks about how he kept this bird, thinking like he had visions of this bird being his BFF, and like he would be the cool old professor guy with the bird. But the bird, being a raptor, had no desire for this. But then suddenly at the end, it is all of those things. Mm-hmm. It follows him around, and it eats from him, and it perches on him. And it has the light of hellfire in its mind, in its eyes. I mean, but I also, like, the other question I have is, are we going to see the Magos again? Because he was such a fun character.
God, I hope so.
Oh
I hope he does buy that amazing house in Tycho Gardens and flourishes as a Magos. And then because he's like, I think the only thing that's keeping him and Max getting back together is that she needs to make sure that he can be happy on his own.
Yes, for sure. And I think he has the steps now to do it. And I wanted him and Max to leave with Eisenhorn. So, I mean, it would have been a cheesy happy ending, but I wanted them to go with him so badly and be his next kill team, because Max and the Magos and Voriat and Nail would have been just like a dream team.
True.
But I
don't forget Medea.
I like Medea, but I'm still angry at her because she should know better. Loyalty to Godwin. Anyways, no, I know. I like Medea too. But
she's scary, people.
Shit. But they,
Talking about you.
I know you are. I would actually like to see another Magos story before another Eisenhorn story.
I agree. I'd even be cool with a Magos novel, not just a short story.
Uh-huh. Well, again, though, I mean, it's a third of this book. That's not...
Honestly, like, the whole Magos could have been told from his point of view, and I would have been... I mean, not first person, but, like, third person limited.
Right.
And I would have been just fine.
That's a decent-sized book.
Yeah. But it wasn't...
A lot of Iax is shorter.
Oh, no, totally. What I'm saying is, like, I don't want just, like, more short stories. Like, I'm cool with actually having, like, another novel.
Yeah, another book. Make a sequel to the Magos, Dan Abnett. Because, yeah, he was a fun character.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. Abnett, you canceled Titans, or DC made you cancel Titans, so you got time. You can fit this into your schedule.
Now who's a scary lady?
I'm not saying I'm unhappy that Titans ended, because comics been a shit show for a while, but, now you have some free time. You're not doing anything else.
That's right. You've got oodles of time. Write another Magos book. Now, please.
Well, you're not writing Gaunt's Ghosts. You know, he just finished a book.
Too soon, Carrie.
He just finished one.
Too soon.
Okay. Oh, okay. He can't take a break to write others before he goes back to Gaunt's Ghosts?
He did that for several years. We had almost a George R.R. Martin-esque bridge between some of the books. But no, I kid. I just love my Gaunt's Ghosts, and I don't want to say goodbye to them. Yeah, no. I want another Magos book. Mm-hmm. You can do it. It's fun. You know, I think one of the things that I liked about him the most, he didn't really have any, like, there was nothing really special about him other than the fact that he just had, like, a whole lot of knowledge.
Right.
But, like, he wasn't an amazing fighter. He wasn't a psycher. He wasn't like, oh, yes, I have much experience with this from this one time.
He was
winging it.
Not an amazing fighter. He tried.
Was the opposite of that.
He tried. What I really liked about him, like, his helpfulness in this book was just, like, just observing nature.
Yes.
You know, because then the whole time they'd be like, what's the point to this? Like, why are you talking about this now? And he's just like, oh, I just find it fascinating. But, you know, this doesn't look right. It's like the way this is growing, it shouldn't do this. And this one looks like much older and it's over here.
I loved that when he was like, these trees have a different sun.
Right.
It was fun. It was a little Sherlock Holmesy, but I really liked it. I thought it was really
fun.
Maybe
that's why I've liked him so much with this. Because he, especially in this book, he's very Sherlock Holmesy. But without the arrogant attitude.
Yes. And with less Benedict Cumberbatch.
And less cocaine.
Well, that too. But, yeah, no, I thought... I liked that about him. I would totally... That would be my biggest burning question is, are we going to get another of the books? I mean, other than the fact of, the hell is going on with Eisenhorn? Why is Neil with him?
I just want to know if Drescher and Max end up together.
Please tell me yes. Like, I want... Somebody should get a happily ever after.
Yeah, somebody in this universe.
Actually... There's one romance that had a happily is a really strong word in the Warhammer 40k universe, but a happily ever after.
I don't think they do happy.
And I won't spoil what it was. But it does exist out there, because eventually you'll read that book.
Oh, okay.
And, yeah. They get a happy-ish ever after.
That's good enough in Warhammer, right?
Right? Pretty much. So, thank you for joining us on our trip through the Magos. Our next book that we're going to read is going to be Blood of Ajax by Robbie McNiven. This one we're going back to Primaris Space Marines because everybody loves Space Marines, but more importantly, everybody loves orcs.
I'm just here for the Ultramarines.
Well, that too. I mean, we're all here for the Ultramarines.
No, that's literally why I bought it when I saw it at the Citadel. A few months ago, I was just basically buying like everything off the shelf, and then Gabe, he knew which symbol to look for, so he grabbed this book and another short story book, which was actually really, really good. Death Knell is what it was called, and so I was just like, well, this is interesting because I'm so glad I did not read it I didn't start reading it until after Dark Imperium. Because talking about the Primaris, I've been like, what is this? Like,
what's a Primaris?
Right.
Right. No, I am really excited for this one. So we'll have a post up on the website for you where you can purchase the book and questions to go along with it and read along with us. Do you want to take us out, Carrie?
Yeah, this is not as scary. Okay.
That's true. It's actually rather funny in places.
Because, well, it is funny in places as well, but I think we've agreed not to do another 700-page book for a while.
See that, but if you, I was going to say I have like one like literally right here.
Okay, but that's an omnibus. That's different. This wasn't exactly an omnibus.
Previously on Eisenhorn is what this was. Yeah, it's gonna be a little while before we tackle another 700-page book. But so a lot of people have like their terms of measurement, right? Where like, especially in America, where we're just like, oh, it's like 2 football fields long, right? And people are like, oh, I understand that term of distance. Still shorter than it.
Is it it or the stand?
Both.
Mm.
It's technically the longer of the two. Because it is like 1173 and the stand unabridged is like 1140 or something like that.
And the unabridged of Les Mis is still thicker, but no one's read that except for like me and probably 10 other people.
Yeah, no, I hated the abridged version of Les Mis, so that wasn't gonna happen. Yeah. But yeah, so longer than a football, still shorter than the stand.
Yeah, it was funny because when I was, because we finished this fairly quickly. I'm very impressed with myself and you.
We did finish this quickly.
In 2 weeks, all right?
Yes!
So then when I was like, well, I want to figure out a book to read next. So I already had this. I was like, I want to read this. And I was like, how long is it? 300 pages? Please.
It's like an appetizer.
It is an appetizer.
Or I guess it's the dessert to the meal. Yes. Anyways, yes, definitely. We're going to be doing some shorties for a while.
Yeah. And we have plenty to do. And if we do another 700-page book, it's going to be because it's an omnibus and we're reading like certain books out of the omnibus.
Yes.
So anyway, enough babbling. So thank you all so much for coming back. The feedback for this podcast has been unbelievable. And Jen and I do this, or we've been reading these books for years. Obviously, her much longer than me, but we're doing this because we love this so much and we talk about this all the time. So why not actually make a podcast about it? And the support has been incredible. So thank you all so very much. We do hope to keep doing this. And we're talking about maybe doing them more often than once a month, but we'll see how that goes. We have delusions of grandeur.
Yes. So we've been doing the first Friday, but maybe if we really, really get into this and if we keep doing little skinny books like this, it could even be every other Friday.
It could be. We'll see. No promises just yet, but
no promises quite yet.
So, but we are on Twitter at WH40k Book Club, and I announced on Twitter that we are Shut up.
It's so silly when you say it that way. I love it, but I'm always like WH40k. It sounds like what my mom would say.
Well, I feel like if I say, it's like, what are you supposed to say? WH40k? I mean, I don't know.
No, WH40k is absolutely the right thing. It just...
Yes, that's why I actually had to look up in my brain. I was like, how do you say this? Because I just can't say Warhammer 40k because it's not correct.
No, it's not.
But I announced on Twitter that we are officially syndicated in that we are on Apple Podcasts or iTunes Podcasts. They keep changing the name. I don't know, but we're there. And we're on Google Podcasts and we're on Stitcher. And of course, as always, the video cast of this is on YouTube. And you can always find just the audio if you prefer. Instead of going to YouTube or downloading from other places, you can still get it directly from the website. Again, like I said, our Twitter account is WH40k Book Club. I am at Crunchy Chocobo. Jen is at Jen Bozier. And wow, I think that's pretty much it. Because the YouTube channel is you know what? I don't have that one memorized because we can't get a vanity plate yet.
But if you like and subscribe, we'll eventually be able to.
That is true. That's true. They've also changed their rules on us. Yes. So, okay. So with that, all right, we got to get back to reading. You all got to get back to reading. All of you? Yes, you got to get back to reading. And we will catch you, I guess, on the other side of the warp.
We read from a crag.
Do the sign of the Aquila. All right. Bye, everybody.